Brown to raw, brown to dark reddish brown color of the soil is due to the presence of. The answer is hematite. Geothite is yellow in color. Martite is a pseudomorph of hematite but is not regularly found in the soil. So the answer will be hematite. Geothite is yellow in color. Hematite is brown to dark reddish brown. This is because of presence of iron oxide mineral in the hematite. Which of the following industrial wastes can be used as an amendment of acidic soils? Lime sludge, basic slag, A and B sodium bicarbonate. The answer is both lime sludge and basic slag. Lime sludge is produced in mostly paper mills. It produces calcium carbonate and calcium hydroxide. So this is used to neutralize the acidity. Whereas basic slag is a byproduct of steel manufacturing. It produces higher amounts of calcium silicates, calcium oxides, magnesium and phosphorus, which acts as a powerful liming material. So the answer is lime sludge and basic slag. Sodium bicarbonate increases salinity and sodicity. It is not the correct answer. Calculate the sodium absorption ratio given the concentration of sodium 80 millimole per liter, calcium 78 millimole per liter, magnesium 50 millimole per liter. Sodium absorption ratio SAR. What is the formula? Is equal to sodium ions divided by square root of calcium plus magnesium divided by 2. If you substitute the values given, the answer will be 10. SCR will be 10, that is healthy. Which of the following nutrient increases plant root growth and improves drought tolerance? Plant root growth is highly increased by phosphorus. So the answer is phosphorus. Nitrogen increases vegetative growth in a luxuriant way. Potassium is for maintaining osmotic balance and water retention, whereas zinc is for hormonal regulation and bulk root structural development, and it is also used for enzyme activation. So according to the question, root growth extensively develops and tolerance to drought tolerance is high for phosphorus. Which nutrient deficiency causes mottled yellow-green leaves with green veins appearing first on younger leaves? So if you look at the question, is saying that yellow-green leaves and yellow leaves with green veins. So this is called as intravenous chlorosis. First point. Second one, he is saying that younger leaves. So the answer is iron. The answer is iron. Younger leaves means iron is an immobile nutrient which is present in the plant tissues. It cannot be translocated. So deficiency occurs in younger leaves and intravenous chlorosis where veins remain green and leaves become yellow. Intravenous chlorosis. So the answer is iron. If you consider zinc, zinc deficiency generally occurs on intermediate or middle leaves or older leaves. So it leads to reduced leaf size. Whereas boron deficiency occurs at tips and terminal buds, brittle, and it causes mostly at terminal portion like at apex portion. Whereas molybdenum deficiency first occurs on older leaves because it is relatively mobile, resembling nitrogen. It is also causing yellowing, but it resembles nitrogen like sulfur, and relatively mobile occurs on older leaves. So younger leaves, intravenous chlorosis. In younger leaves, that answer is iron. When does type 1 error occur in testing of statistical hypothesis? The answer is null hypothesis is rejected if it is true. Type 1 error, null hypothesis is rejected if it is true. Type 1 error rejecting the null hypothesis when it is actually true. This is called as false alarm. Then what is type 2 error? Failing to reject or accepting the null hypothesis when it is false. It is called as misdetection. That is called as type 2 error. Type 1 error is rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. Type 2 error is failing to reject or accepting the null hypothesis when it is false. When a leguminous green manure C/N ratio less than 30:1, remember it is given less than 30 is to 1 is added to the soil, the nitrogen availability in the soil will be, the answer will be increasing. Nitrogen availability will be increasing. C is to N ratio, if it is less than 30 is to 1, it undergoes mineralization. If it is greater than 30 is to 1, it undergoes immobilization. So the critical typical point lies between 20 is to 1 to 30 is to 1. So the H to N ratio is nothing but whether soil microbes will release or consume nitrogen during decomposition process. That is determined by the C is to N ratio. If it is less than 30 is to 1, it means it contains more enough nitrogen to satisfy the dietary requirements of decomposing microbes. As a result, what happens? The microbes break down the plant tissue rapidly and release excess nitrogen into the soil, whereas in the form of ammonium and nitrate ions. So this process is called as mineralization. If it is greater than 30 is to 1, so it will be consumed by the microbes and it will be unavailable to the plant. So here he is given less than 30 is to 1. So that is, it increases the availability of nitrates. According to the Stephen Boltzmann's law, the total radiant existence from the surface of a material watt per meter square is proportional to the dash to the power of absolute temperature of a emitting material. It is simply a law given by the Stephen Boltzmann law. The formula is E. Existence, total radiant existence is equal to sigma T to the power of 4. Sigma is the Stephen Boltzmann constant. T is the absolute temperature. So existence depends on fourth power of temperature. So the answer will be option C. What is the altitude range in which polar orbiting satellites for Earth observation generally operate? The answer will be 700 to 1500 kilometers. That is low Earth orbit, where normal activities, this is normal altitude, where you can capture high resolution images and precise data from the Earth surface. Okay, 7 to 15 kilometers is very less and it is not possible to maintain Earth's orbits or Earth satellites, whereas 7,000 to 15,000 kilometer is where medium Earth orbits operate, generally for GPS rather than high resolution Earth imaging. High resolution imaging means that is about 700 to 1500. Internal necrosis of mango occurs due to, the answer is boron deficiency. Which of the following process is responsible for movement of nutrient ions along with irrigation water or rainwater? The answer is mass flow. Mass flow is the movement of substances in bulk down across pressure gradient, whereas diffusion is the movement of individual ions down the concentration gradient, which happens independent of water movement, whereas contact exchange is involving direct exchange of ions between roots and soil colloids and soil surface without moving long distances through the soil water. So here the answer will be mass flow. Fossilization process of soil formation is also called as, the answer is acid hydrolysis. Fossilization formation process also called as acid hydrolysis. Fossilization generally occurs in cool and humid climate areas where high rainfall and decomposing organic matter creates acidic conditions. This intense acidity drives acid hydrolysis, which breaks down primary minerals like clays and silicates. This results in soluble iron and aluminum are leached downwards, leaving bleached silica and in E horizon, elevated horizon. So this process is called as fossilization, that is acid hydrolysis. Whereas alkali hydrolysis is under alkaline conditions, or basic conditions, whereas fossilization is strictly under low pH or acidic conditions. Okay. Which of the following impurities present in urea and is toxic to the plants? The answer is biuret. Biuret formation during urea is highly toxic to the plant. When molten urea is heated, is heated above its melting point, that is near in and around 132 degrees, what happens? Two urea molecules will be formed and they're condensed to form biuret, which is highly toxic to the plant. So the range is 1.5 is normal, and for foliar spray it is 0.25. If biuret concentration is more than 0.25 in case of foliar, or in case of normal conditions it is 1.5, it is toxic. Which of the following gases has the highest global warming potential? The answer is SF6. The answer is SF6. What is global warming potential? It measures how much energy the emissions of 1 ton of gas will absorb over a given period, usually 100 years, relative to 1 ton of CO2. That is called as global warming potential. For carbon dioxide, it is baseline, it is 1. For N2O, nitrous oxide, it is in and around 300, 268 to 298. For SF6 is 23,000. SF6 is 23,000, nearly 20,500. So among these, which is highest? That is SF6. For CH4, it is 28 to 36. Due to extreme heat, the dormancy of pest is called as. The answer is estivation. Hibernation is opposite of estivation, that it occurs in winter dormancy, that is due to extreme cold, whereas estivation is due to higher temperature. Which of the following conditions favor conditional instability in the atmosphere? Conditional instability occurs when atmospheric stability depends on whether rising air is cool or dry. When rising air particle is dry or saturated or saturated. So what is dry adiabatic lapse rate? The rate at which unsaturated air parcels cool air as it rises, that is at 10 degrees per kilometer. What is saturated adiabatic lapse rate? The rate at which saturated air parcels cools as it rises 6 degrees centigrade per kilometer, which is slower due to release of latent heat from condensation. For conditional instability, this question, conditional instability to occur, what should be the condition? Saturated adiabatic lapse rate should be or greater than ELR, should be greater than dry adiabatic lapse rate. ELR stands for environmental lapse rate. Okay. If in an air parcel, means air parcel is nothing but air. If in an air parcel is drier in nature, it cools faster than environment. If the environmental air is dry, it cools faster than environment, make it colder and denser than surrounding air. So it sinks. If the air parcel becomes saturated, if the air parcel that is moving is saturated, it cools slower than the environment, making it warmer and lighter than the surroundings, which is unstable in nature. Based on that, what is the answer? When the environmental lapse rate is greater than saturated adiabatic lapse rate but lower than dry adiabatic lapse rate, this creates conditional instability. Bowen ratio is defined as. What is Bowen ratio? It measures energy transfer at surface. It measures energy transfer at surface. The formula is Bowen ratio B is equal to H by lambda E, where H stands for sensible heat flux. Sensible heat flux. Lambda E stands for latent heat flux. Latent heat flux. So what is the answer here? Bowen ratio is defined as ratio of sensible and latent heat flux. In an agriculture field, the net radiation and soil heat flux for a given instant during noon time are radiation has given 600 watt per meter square, soil heat flux he has given 70 watt per meter square. Evaporative fraction EF is 0.5. What will be the latent heat flux of a evapotranspiration? So net radiation is 600, soil heat flux is, that is G. Soil heat flux G is 70 watt per meter square. Net radiation Rn, radiation, that is 600. Soil heat flux is 70, whereas evaporative fraction has given 0.5. What is the formula? What is the formula for latent heat flux? That is EF, evaporative fraction multiplied with net radiation minus G. That is, what is G? Soil heat flux. G is soil heat flux. What is the evaporative fraction? How much you got? 0.5. Okay. Into net radiation 600 minus, what is G value? What is G value? 70. If you calculate, the answer will be 265 watt per meter square. In a similar fashion, you can also calculate sensible heat flux. The formula for sensible heat flux, H is equal to 1 minus evaporative fraction multiplied with net radiation minus soil heat flux, that is G. This is the formula for sensible heat flux. What is the formula for latent heat flux? Evaporative fraction multiplied with Rn minus G, that is available energy. For a reason, downwelling shortwave, downwelling long wave radiation fluxes and upwelling long wave radiation fluxes are 700 watt per meter square, 400 and 450 watt per meter square respectively. What is the net surface radiation? Assuming albedo 20%. What you ask is net surface radiation. Net surface radiation R net is equal to short wave net minus, sorry, short wave net plus long wave net. This is the formula for net surface radiation, short wave net plus long wave net. How to measure long wave net? He has given already. How to measure long wave net? That is long wave downwell minus long wave uphill. That is 400 minus 450. You will get minus 50. How to calculate short wave net? Short wave net is equal to 1 minus albedo, that is 0.20% into what? So, downwelling long wave radiation, that is how much he has given? 700 into 700, that gives 560. Now substitute the values in net surface radiation, that is short wave, that is 560 minus 50. The answer will be 510. The answer will be 510. Moisture adequacy index MAI is defined as ratio of actual and potential evapotranspiration. Moisture MAI is equal to AET, actual evapotranspiration, divided by PET. What is actual evapotranspiration? It is the real amount of water delivered to the atmosphere through evaporation and plant transpiration based on available soil moisture. What is potential evapotranspiration? So what is the maximum possible water loss to the atmosphere? It is maximum water loss, it is available water loss. The ratio of these two gives moisture adequacy index. Which of the following is a not crop simulation model? Not crop simulation model. The answer is hydrus. Hydrus is not a crop simulation model. It is a model for simulating water flow. Water flow, heat transport, heat transport and solute movement and solute movement. Whereas series if you abbreviate series, that is crop environment resource synthesis, that is series model. It is used to simulate growth and yield of specific crops like wheat, rice and maize. It is used to simulate crop growth and yield of wheat, rice and maize. EPSIM, that is Agriculture Production Systems Simulator. It is for simulating agricultural systems for multiple crop production dynamics. Multiple crop production dynamics, it is for EPSIM. Series is for rice, maize and wheat growth and yield data simulation. OFOST, it is for mechanistic dynamic crop growth simulation model. Mechanistic dynamic crop growth simulation model, which is used to calculate crop production and biomass development. Biomass development, whereas hydrus is for solute movement, heat transport and water movement. Collision coalescence is a mechanism of rain formation. Which land use land cover is having maximum albedo? The answer is no. Always remember, bright light colored surfaces will reflect more light and having higher albedo. Bright and light colored surfaces will reflect more light and have higher albedo than dark colored. Among these, the most bright is snow. Since it is very white in nature, it will be having more albedo, which is ranging from 0 to 0.8 to 0.9. Whereas for desert, it may be around 0.3 to 0.4. These are approximate values. For vegetation, it is about 0.2. For bare soil, it is about 0.1 to 0.3. For snow, it is about 0.8 to 0.9. But always you should remember, bright light colored surfaces will reflect more radiation. Ozone holes are prominent in poles. Radiant scattering of sunlight in the Earth's atmosphere is inversely proportional to the fourth power of wavelength. I is inversely proportional to the fourth power of wavelength. Always remember, shorter wavelengths scatter more than longer wavelengths. Example for shorter wavelengths are blue and violet. Longer wavelength is red. Because shorter wavelengths scatter more, that is why your sky color will be bluish in nature. Which remote sensing based vegetation indices represent green vigor of a crop? The answer is EVI. What is EVI? Enhanced Vegetation Index is specifically designed to optimize vegetation signal with improved sensitivity in high biomass regions. Okay. Then what is NDWI? It is normalized difference water index, which is used to monitor changes in water content in water bodies. LSWI, that is what it is, land surface water index, used to measure moisture content of land surface and soil vegetation systems. And what is SIPI? That is structure insensitive pigment index, which is used to estimate the ratio of carotenoids to chlorophyll to chlorophyll in areas with high canopy stress rather than overall green vigor. The degree to which vegetation primary productivity is reduced depends on the physiological response to. The answer is all of the above. That is, limited plant available water, reduction in enzymatic activities, and stomatal closure. In northern hemisphere, a south-facing slope is always warmer than. The answer is north-facing slope. North-facing slope because the sun is towards south. South. The sun faces towards south. Hence, south receives direct sunlight. Which of the following measurement principles is used for sensible heat flux computation from agriculture field? The answer is eddy covariance method. For a given period, two crops A and B, equal area water consumption are A is 800, B is 700 mm respectively. A yield is 5000, B yield is 3000. Calculate water productivity. The formula for water productivity is crop yield. Crop yield kg per hectare divided by water consumption. Water consumption. If you substitute the values of A and B, you will get A is higher than that of B. A is higher than that of B. A you will get in and around some 6.25. B you will get water productivity of some 4.2. Okay. Based on that, if you see that A is higher than B, always remember water productivity is equal to crop yield divided by water consumption. Over soil crop complex and flat terrain, stability of surface layer with an atmospheric boundary layer is determined by both Richardson and Money-Obukov length. Both these are used to determine these parameters.